So anyway, okay. So when I was a child, I used to have this reoccurring dream, and it was of an old lady holding me and looking at me, and it really felt like such love. But when I got older, as I was growing up, I realized I don't. This old lady, there was no one in my family. There was no one old. I had no grandparents or anything like that. So I said to my mom one day, "Hey, I've been having this reoccurring dream of this old lady holding me. What do you think that could be?" And she said, "Well, I don't know. The only thing I can remember is your great grandmother holding you, but that was when you were like 4 months old, and she died when you were like 6 months old." And she's like, "You wouldn't remember that, but I do remember that, and I love that memory. It's a very fond memory, and it's the only memory I actually have of any of my grandparents. I never met a single grandparent." So I grew up in Chicago. Yes, great city. This story takes place in Chicago, 1985. I grew up 2 parents like all of us, my mother and father. I was an only child. I was a lonely only child. And my parents were good people, but my mother, she worked all day. And when she would come home from work, all she really wanted to do was eat, do her hair, get her hair in curlers, and get ready for work the next day, and then like watch TV. And my dad, you know, he was like a bit up and down. I think if he saw a therapist, he would be considered bipolar by today's standards. But in the 70s and 80s, you know, whatever. And my dad was one of those guys who showed his love through violence and hitting. And let's just say, when I was a child, I got a lot of love. So when I needed someone to talk to, I definitely wasn't going to them. But what I did notice was I had these friends, and a lot of my friends, they had grandparents. Their grandparents were still alive. And their grandparents were awesome. They were excellent. They were cool. They were fun. They seemed more like friends. Like where I came from, your family, you all still lived in like the same house. So like, you know, my family, my friends' families, their grandparents like still lived with them. They grew up and they were there. And it was really neat. And my one friend especially, this one friend, Lance Paulson. And he had a grandfather, George, which I learned they said was Polish for grandpa. I don't know, I'm Italian, I had no fucking idea. I believe it. But George was super cool. Like, I loved George. He was really neat. He would drive us places. You know, he was a little older, so he had a car. So he would drive us to the mall, to the park, and drop us off. And he was really cool. Like, with just a phone call, he'd pick us back up. He was great. And but one of the really neat things about George that I especially loved was he would actually ask us questions about us. You know, he would talk to us individually every now and again, ask how our days were and how we were doing, how we were feeling, and stuff like that. And that was stuff I just didn't get at home, and stuff I couldn't really talk about with my friends. You know, Chicago tough guy. You know, he used to talk about fucking Marvel Comics and He-Man and bullshit, you know. So it was really neat to have that, and I loved that. My dad, even though my dad did do some things of illegal activity, one job my father did have was he cleaned apartments, which when I was a kid I was always embarrassed to tell people that my dad did that. I thought it was cooler to say he was a drug dealer, which he did for a short time, which isn't cool at all. But the neat thing about when he cleaned apartments was sometimes he would take me with him, and when he would do that, when he would go to that job, he was in a good mood. And later I realized, because that was something like legit, and he was making cash and whatever. And the neat thing about that job was, it was a neat bus journey from like the shitty neighborhood we lived in to this like nicer neighborhood. And another neat thing about the trip was, after we'd get off the bus, we had a short walk, and on that short walk, we'd go past this like old people's home. And I freaking loved the old people's home because like there were all these like cute old jolly people walking around, like, you know, with canes and in wheelchairs, and I just loved it. And for someone who didn't have a grandparent and like longed for a grandparent, this was like the fucking Walmart of grandparents. I was like, holy shit, you know, like this is amazing. And like, it was 1985, Cocoon had just come out, so I was like, yes, you know. I loved it. And that was really cool. And one day I'm hanging out with my buddy Huey, and Huey, like I said, it's 1985, so 1985 I was 14. And Huey and I are hanging out on the front porch, and Huey was one of my I was born in 1971. It looked like you were doing the math. So Huey was the one friend I had that I could be vulnerable with. You know, like I said, we've been friends since 3rd grade. Once when I was in 6th grade, he let me fart into his face because he said he liked the smell of farts, which is fucking weird. But that was endearing about him. He was just one of those guys, and I could say anything to him. So one of the things I had said to him while we were hanging out was like, man, you know, like, I really want a grandparent, you know, like, it's something I've always wanted. And I didn't know this, but he's like, yeah, me too. I didn't grow up with grandparents either. And I was like, fuck. Hey, you know, my dad works right near this area where there's just like a bunch of grandparents there. Why don't we go and adopt a grandparent? And Huey, being the good buddy, was like, yeah, let's do it. So fucking hey, we took the bus down to this old people's home that day. We just immediately split. It was like an impulsive action. And we get there, and all of a sudden you get there, and we're just like, what are we doing here? You know, like, but we were nervous, but also, you know, nervous, but like, fucking hey, man, I'm here for a grandparent, you know, like, I'm doing this. So we go, we push open the door, and man, my nerves are gunning, right? And I'm thinking like, wow, this is gonna be like Cocoon is happening. We hold people laughing and dancing, but instead it's quiet. You just hear like faint sounds of TV, coughing, and a smell of urine in every breath you take, you know. But there's this jolly lady at the desk, and she says, "Can I help you too?" And we're like, "Oh yeah." And immediately I'm like, hey, you know, we're here to adopt grandparents. And she had this smile, and she was endeared by us. And we had a little bit of chit chat, and after some small talk, she's like, you know, let me go see what I can do. And I don't know why I thought, for some reason I thought like George was in the army or something like that. I don't know why. So as she's taking off, I said, oh, and by the way, can you make mine like a World War II guy or something? And she's like, yeah. She smelled me out forever. So Huey and I are hanging out like with anxiety, waiting, like, oh my God. And then she comes back and she's all smiles. And we're like, oh my God. And then she found 2 candidates for us. And we're like, this is amazing. She takes Huey off to his grandparent. And I'm standing there waiting. And then she comes and gets me. And I felt like the golden child because it was my idea, you know. So I'm waiting. And then we're going to go into this room. And I am fucking like, oh God, you know. And then we open the door. And then there he is, Carl. He's not chubby or anything like George. He's very thin and tall. I mean, I could see this as he's laying in a bed. By the way, he never got out of the bed. But laying in the bed under a blanket. And we immediately, we hit it off right away. We started talking. It was really cool. She left the room and we started. It was a great conversation. It was really neat. The only thing is, I will admit, the first meeting he talked more about him than me, which was a little upsetting. But I learned some neat things. Like I did learn he was in World War II, which I was like, great, I got a war guy. This is awesome. And I learned that he hated his children because they didn't visit him. But this was I thought this was really great. He hated his nieces and nephews even more than his children because they reminded him of his kids. Like, that's fucking great. This guy is cool, you know. So then my second visit, I was excited to go see him. My mom actually worked for a magazine circulation company in Chicago called Charles Levy. And she would get free magazines. So I brought him some comic books when I went to go see him. And we talked a little more about me and a little more about him, which I still didn't really like too much. I really wanted to talk about me. And then the third visit, I go to see him. The third visit was the sweet spot. Because that was a visit where we really talked a lot about me. And but the important thing in that visit was we talked about my father and the relationship I had with my dad. And he explained to me that some men do not know how to communicate well. And they show their love through violence and whatnot. And that's hard to take, but I didn't really understand it then, but I did. It took a little time and it soaked in, and I did understand it. And when I saw my father later, you know, of course you don't want to get hit, but you see the reaction to whatever, and you know, like, yeah, this is his way of showing love. and whatever. So when I was going to see Carl for my 4th visit, and knowing he was in the Army, I asked my mom, hey, give me some guns and ammo magazines. I want this, whatever, these comic books, whatever. And so I'm very excited. I got these gun magazines this time, and I'm like, man, oh my God, I want to tell him too about, like, even though my dad I didn't talk to my dad and he hasn't stopped hitting me, but I understand it more. And not that I like that, but it's whatever. For what it's worth, it makes it a little bit easier to deal with. So I go there for the 4th visit, and I show up, and as I'm walking in, the lady who usually smiles, and as I walk past her, she stops me and she says, son, I'm sorry, but Carl passed. And I just was like, I stood there, and I was numb for a moment. She goes, I feel really bad, but this sort of things happens at a hospice. And I didn't know what a hospice was. Now I know. I mean, of course, that's why he was so skinny and always under the blanket and whatnot, of course. And I left like a fucking kid, like a brat. Like, I stormed out of there, and I was mad. I was mad at myself. You know, I was pissed. Like, why did I even do this? This was a fucking waste of time. Of course. This is ridiculous. Of course it died. Of course, you know, everyone dies. I mean, you know, and whatnot. So, I was really upset, but I was like, fuck this. I'm not going to let myself cry. I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, it's not going to affect me. And I thought for a while it didn't affect me. But I realized, you know what? It did affect me. Carl affected me in a huge way. It's the reason why now today I can't have pets. I just can't have a pet. And it's the reason why my wife is 11 years younger than me. I don't like things that die before me. So now, sometimes when I go out for a little stroll or whatnot, and I walk past like an old person somewhere, I see a bunch of old people, I stop and I look and I go, huh, I wonder if maybe one of them is looking for a grandson. Nah, not for me. Thank you very much.